68. My name is Blaise. I think I've met everybody. Kev is on camera, so if you are reading and you don't want to be on YouTube, please let Kev know so that he doesn't include you in the when we load it up. Les is up the back. He's going to be timing everyone's reading. We'll make it 5 minutes tonight. At the 4.5 minute mark, Les is going to double ding.
Yeah, one around.
Or one ding then for a warning, and then double ding at 5 minutes.
You can count.
And that means that your time is up. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a sentence, it's fine to finish it. But if you're, near the top of a page, don't read the whole page because it's not fair to everybody else. So, we've got a pretty good crowd tonight. It's always hard to know. It's not too cold tonight. So that's great to see you all. Now, I am going to start with Jenny. Jenny is going to read. Well, you're not a newbie, so
No.
almost a newbie. Jenny's going to read a story called Joe.
I've got no idea how that goes with 5 minutes, but anyway.
So there you go.
Okay. Joe pedals his bike as fast as his tired legs would go. After finishing work for the day at McRobertson's, it had been a rush for him to get to football training. A meat pie and a cuppa for lunch was hours ago, and now he could eat a horse. As the shadows lengthened and darkness crept across the sky, Mum's lamb roast was calling him home. Joe cycled down Brunswick Street, weaving between the cars and trams. At the corner of Johnson Street, the driver of the green tram behind him dinged his bell to get him to move out of the way. Around a few corners and into Chapel Street, and he was home. He pulled up in front of a narrow single-storey house, much like all the others in the street, jammed up against each other, front door one side, bedroom window the other, and a small veranda onto the street. No room for any garden or ornamentation, and no money for them, even if there was room. Soft ash from smoke billowing out of nearby factories settled on the tin roofs of the houses. The girls from next door playing hopscotch, marked out in charcoal on the narrow road, had to jump out of the way when a horse and cart trundled by. "Bottle-o, bring out your bottles." Joe leaned his bike up against the peeling boards at the front of the house, his footsteps echoing on the bare floorboards. He walked down the narrow passage past the room where his dad was slumped asleep in the armchair, probably drunk again with his mates down at the Birmingham Hotel. "I'm starving. That roast smells delicious," Joe declared, smacking his lips as he gave his mum a hug. She pushed him away. "You're filthy. Get into that tub first. Eddie has not long got out. But first, can you fetch in a bundle of wood for the stove?" She stuck her head around the kitchen door and shouted, "Alfred, wake up. Dinner will be on the table soon." Joe wondered again how his mother put up with his father. Glad was a ray of sunshine in that house. Glad by name and glad by nature. Alfred was a different kettle of fish, grumpy and obnoxious, particularly when he was drunk, which was a regular occurrence. At least when his father was away with the Merchant Navy for weeks at a time, the house was a much nicer place. But when he was on shore, he made up for lost time with his drinking and arguing. Glad was the rock that kept the house and family together. Fresh bruises were visible on Gladys's cheek. "Dad been handy with his fist again?" Joe asked, concerned. "It's okay," Glad replied, grimacing as she tried to smile. "It was my fault, not quick enough getting his breakfast on the table. Besides, as my mother would say, I made my bed, I have to lie in it. There's a lot worse husbands around." Joe was not sure of that, but he knew it was common in other houses too, for women to regularly feel the back of their man's hand. As Joe luxuriated in the barely warm water in the tin tub, his cares washed away. Thursday evening, the end of the working week as Easter approached. A sleep-in on Good Friday. Bliss. Joe's young body could cope with much, but standing all day in the factory packing chocolates was hard on his back and legs. Running around playing football on the weekends got his blood pumping but added different aches and pains in his muscles. But the camaraderie and teamwork on the field, especially with his mates Chuka and Grubby, made it worthwhile. Joe had been looking forward to the Easter break. His older brother Eddie and his girl Vi had planned a day at the zoo on Easter Sunday, and Joe hoped to tag along with them. The weather was warm and bright on that April Fool's Day, Easter Sunday, as the trio walked to the train station at Edinburgh Gardens to catch the 10 o'clock train. After Eddie and Vi found seats in the train carriage, Joe sat down in the only other available seat, next to a couple of ladies who were obviously mother and daughter. Turning to the two ladies, he struck up a conversation, unimaginatively, about the weather. "Bit warm today, isn't it? We're heading to the zoo." "So are we," the older woman responded. "Molly wants a ride on Queenie the elephant." "No, I don't," retorted the younger woman. "You won't get me up there in a pink fit." Joe joined in. "I'll come, and it's not that bad. I'll go with you if you're scared." Molly snapped back. "No thanks, I don't know you from Adam." Joe decided it was time to shut up, but he couldn't help sneaking sly glances at the girl he now knew as Molly. Joe could see Molly was also sneaking surreptitious looks at him. She glanced at Joe with big brown eyes, her soft dark curls topped with a red felt hat which matched her shoes. Probably too prim and proper for the likes of him, like chalk and cheese. She with dark hair and a coffee complexion, rounded in all the right places, he freckled and blue-eyed, skinny as a greyhound. She dolled up for a day out, he in trousers with patched knees and shoes that let in the rain.
A bit of advertising. Yeah, why not? Next month will be the Victoria Senior Festival, and on Wednesday, the 9th of October at 2 p.m. at the Melbourne Festival Hub at Melbourne Town Hall, the Mediterranean music legends Marcello D'Amico and Pauline D'Amico are festival favourites for their performance of traditional Italian and regional music. I didn't write it, they did. Chris did. By the way, Chris, the director, has been here 3 times for my exhibition, so he knows. So, if someone wants to have a bit of free entertainment for the week, for the whole festival, we'll be there Wednesday the 9th at 2 p.m. Following up on last month's episode of the fishing trip that went totally wrong because of the rough weather, but we saved their lives, was we were battling with the elements, with the heavy sea, total darkness, and then of course we had thunderstorms and the waves were coming inside the boat, and I was busy bailing water out, but I wasn't there. And eventually we were able to go on the other side of the island and we were safe. In the meantime, the large population of Genostra, the whole of the town, there was about 60 of them, were not aware of what was happening. They knew we couldn't get into port. So they said, "Oh look, they'll find a way of staying out in the sea to make sure that nothing would happen." But about 8 o'clock, my brother, who happened to be the local priest, that's how I happened to be there, started ringing the bell, the little church bell, and in sign of that was the usual, when something was wrong in the island, the bell rang and people would meet in the church to find out what happened because of emergency. So the few people got in there and I said, "Look, my brother and 4 other men are out in the sea somewhere. We don't know where, we can't see anywhere. What are we going to do?" So they decided that most of them would get together and get oil lamps, kerosene lamps, but mainly oil because kerosene was hard to get because it could only get there by jerry cans, by boat, and would be carried on the back because there was no transport. Hoping that we, from the middle of the sea, could see the light where the land was. And some of them ventured a bit further out from the church, risking their lives in night time because you couldn't see. Because there was a small, dangerous footpath that went along the coast to the other side where there was another smaller port, but very rarely used, only because there was no one else living there anyway. And so they went at the second port hoping that we would see the light, but we never saw anything. So about midnight, they all went back to church. You know, they started praying and they had a vigil. So in the morning, we were safe, starving, but safe. We had to decide what are we going to do. It was still rough. Said the people, because there was no communication, forget about having mobile telephone. There was not even a telephone. And the only way was by word of mouth. So we decided that I and another man would venture walking through the rocks about 3 or 4 kilometres, you know, hoping that the sea waves wouldn't be too high and hitting against the rocks, and we were running the danger of being thrown out in the sea, because there was no road, no footpath, and then we had to trying to dodge the volcanic rocks that would come out every so often from. So eventually we made it back to the place where some people were waiting. So I was saying a sense of joy, but a sense of belonging that today is lost. We were part of the big family because of total isolation anyway, so whether you like it or not, you got to live with your neighbours, and being a small place. But I was 13. For the first time, I felt that I belonged with other people beside my family, that life had to be shared in the good times and the bad times. And in the bad times, you know who cares for you.
Paul. Oh. Now, why did I think your surname was South?
It's what did I write? Yeah, changes.
Have you changed your name? You're just trying to confuse me.
Yeah. I changed it again. It's Paul Bearer now. I change it every year or two just to make sure I get the minimum amount of punters, for work. Okay. This one is not going to make any sense. It's called Ambulance. The sky is blue and the trees are green. I reckon it's about 1:30, which must mean something. Outside, people are crashing their cars, boarding trains. I'm not saying anything, but still. A good person never forgives themselves. Is that an ambulance, or is it the reincarnated being reinstated? Cows chew grass, birds fall from the sky. I wait at my desk for something to happen. I'm getting more and more impossible to understand the older I get. I can't help myself. I'm sorry for things I haven't even done yet. Stealing my mother's pills springs to mind. An attractive way to pull everything down over my head. And I'm sorry, Mum. I'm so. And you too old to know, too stoned. How many do I have left, love? I've lived with myself badly. I don't like to get up of a morning. I'd rather be unconscious. I live on bread, though sometimes I'll make beans for supper. I'm hardly even here. I walk into people, trip over curbs. I point at a tree accusingly. Well, that's what you get, I say without moving my lips. My thoughts shock people. I'll say something meaningless and casual. They look at me as if they've met death. My swearing is casual too. I was talking to a girl with a ponytail, saying something banal like, So I went, and then if I can, fuck being a natural pause, I can't tell you what I saw in their face. I think I've got one more. If there's time. That one's not quite finished. I'll read it anyway. I just finished this tonight. Glowworms. I regret that we didn't see the glowworms together. Like always, we were poor people, time and money-wise. Our desperate little holidays. Later you said you wished that we'd never gone away. Forcing what should be easy. It's no holiday. Yes, I know. You're right. But now I wish we had gone there. We had so many brochures. The Otway Fly, Lockhart Gorge. But you returned to the glowworms. A photocopied pamphlet, little black lines for illustrations. I don't know why I took control. Standing in the height of summer, I couldn't see it. And I had such need for something to take back to the city. The years have passed on. I've never seen glowworms, but I still think about them sometimes when it's late and I'm laying in bed. They shine for me in the dark, and I gaze up at them, my whole body a kind of wish, but I cannot really see them. I wish we had gone there, not for you or me, but for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I was listening to the radio last night, and someone has written a novel set in Tassie where the main character studies the circadian rhythms of glowworms. I don't know. Might be worth looking into. Okay, Gay Miller.
I thought I'd do something serious tonight instead of something funny, simply because I had a gig at a nursing home, and before I went there I asked the lady, how many of you people is compos mentis? And she thought about it and she said, oh, nearly all of them. And I said, that's fine, because I didn't want to waste my time going if they were not, because they don't understand my jokes, you know. And anyway, when I get there, I was sat down at a little table to have a cup of tea before I started, and one lady sat there for the entire proceedings like this. The other lady was like this. And I thought, I think I'm in trouble here. I don't know that she's going to understand what I'm talking about. And the night went down from there on. I was standing on a corner edge with two rooms to talk to, which I couldn't see either of them properly. One was round there behind me and one was round there. And there was also a man who was very, very spooky, who told me he was a famous tenor, which I knew he wasn't. And he stood right behind me, about an inch away from me, and I didn't even know he was there until at the end, and I went, ah! And he'd been standing, and so I had a most nightmarish sort of journey, and nobody thought anything was funny, and I didn't think it was funny either, because they didn't understand anything I was saying, and the boss of the place was so nice. She said, I'd like very much to have you back, so that I can choose out a number of people who understand what we were talking about. All my funny jokes went to nothing, so I thought, right, tonight you're getting something serious. This is just from a short story, beginning of a short story called that I've written, called The Passage of Grief. And I don't know whether I have to explain this because you're all intelligent people, but I'm not, and I thought I should explain that each chapter starts with a little verse. Don't hold my hand or touch me. Rather let me stand alone to absorb the pain of change, to cry or rage within myself, to become accustomed to a new state of being. The morning light was only just filtering through the trees and dribbling weakly across the kitchen window when Frank reluctantly left his bed. He knew today was going to be difficult, but he believed if he could hold himself together today, he could cope with tomorrow. He put the kettle on and popped some toast into the old toaster. Joyce had put a piece of cake in the toaster once and nearly set the kitchen on fire. Joyce with her dementia and her gentle smile. He glanced at the time. His daughter would arrive soon. She always liked to arrive early, and she'd hardly left him alone. It was all he could do to stop her moving in with him. "I need room to think, Stacey," he said. "I need to be alone, to come to terms with it all. I need time and space to breathe." He stood and stared out at the garden, at the little black gate and the canal behind. Innocent enough, but Frank knew its secrets. The last 2 weeks were like a nightmare. Joyce missing, police walking up and down the sides of the canal. The coroner's report, accidental drowning. The coroner found that Joyce, deep within her dementia, had wandered out into the backyard late at night, out to her beloved canal with the carefully planted green grass. In her saner days, it was Joyce's favourite place to have a cuppa or lunch, or just to sit and watch the silver quick flow of the water. The conclusion was that Joyce had gone too close to the edge and had slipped unseen into the inky water and drowned. No one was to blame, the report said. Certainly not her husband, who'd always been you know what it is, watching his wife. However, that night she was in a deep sleep in her bed when he remembered he'd left some freshly dug radishes out on the little vegetable garden by the canal. So after checking on her, he went to fetch them. He'd come in, washed his hands and put the radishes away. That had been about 9:15. He remembered looking at the clock when he'd come in. He'd been exceedingly tired that night after having a bad day with Joyce. She'd thrown her dinner on the floor, refused to eat anything and tore up the newspaper, which Frank had not had time to read. Consequently, his movements were slow, and he did not go out to check the gate and bring in the cat as per usual. In fact, he did not go out until 11:10 that night after watching the 10:30 news. It must have been during this time that Joyce had woken and wandered out through the garden and unlocked the gate out and to go out onto her beloved canal. I'll stop there, but thank you.
Thanks, Gay. Shell and Sam? Okay, we will go with Betty, shall we? Please, Betty is going to read a poem. Okay.
During the 1800s, in Italy, in particular southern Italy, life was very hard for the local people, and the men took it upon themselves to look for work elsewhere. They hired themselves out as labourers. They would travel to northern Italy and then further afield into France, Germany, England. Some of them went as far as America to help build the bridges in New York, and some of them would go to Argentina on the seasons to bring in the crops. But one area below Naples, in one particular mountainous area that was stricken with poverty, the men were musicians, particularly harpists and violinists, and they used to hire themselves out, but they used to hire themselves out to play music, and they travelled the world. I've written this poem to honour those men, those thousands of men and boys, and in particular one of those many thousands, Francesco Antonio Leone, my great-grandfather. The poem's called Men of Potenza. Ancient Potenza, a land cruel and hard, your people cried out, but you hardened your heart. Earthquakes, erosion devastated the land. Crop yields too small, no room to expand. Work in strange lands beckoned to them. They journeyed afar, these strong, bold men. Fathers, sons, brothers accepted their fate, travelled to Naples, where steamships did wait, sailed across oceans to far distant lands, playing for patrons with their family string bands. New York, Melbourne, Rio, Cape Town. With time, They became musicians of renown. Men of Potenza, a place south of Rome, fated to travel a long way from home. Brave men from the mountains, they go where they must. Supporting their loved ones was their sacred trust. Money sent home made loved ones secure, though long separations they had to endure. Wives, husbands, sons, oceans apart, each with love buried deep in their heart. Old woman sits by the window, yearning for the sound of her children's footsteps returning. But they pace foreign pavements, laneways and streets. She hears just the sound of her lonely heartbeats. Too many trips as the long years passed. Returning men vow this would be their last. They packed up their families, all things of worth, saddened to leave the land of their birth. Ancient Potenza, you hardened your heart, ignored plaintive cries, so now they depart. Too late for regrets, you must suffer the loss. Your children thrive now, neath the great Southern Cross. Thank you.
So we're going to follow that up with Dominic. So while you're getting ready, would you like a stool, Dominic?
Sure, that'd
Yeah.
be fine, thanks. A lot of my instigation because I thought the story was well worth telling. My own granddaddies, a couple of worked in America, one on the Brooklyn Bridge. There's a lot of untold stories of hardship. And I like that poem so much. And I sometimes think a song actually keeps a poem alive, doesn't it? There's some beautiful Henry Lawson poetry that's been put to music. And without the song, you would never probably have noticed it. So for better or for worse, I put a tune to this. So it's the same thing you just heard, just in music form, I guess. Ancient Potenza, a land cruel and hard. Your people cried out, but you hardened your heart. Earthquakes, erosions devastate the land. Crop fields too small, no room to expand. Work in strange lands beckon to them. They travelled afar, these brave old men. Fathers, sons, brothers accepted their fate. Travelled to Naples, where steamships did wait. Men of Potenza, a place south of Rome, fated to travel a long way from home. Brave men from the mountains go where they must, supporting their loved ones, their sacred trust. Work in strange lands beckon to them. They travelled afar, these brave old men. New York and Melbourne, Rio, Cape Town. In time they became musicians of renown. Money sent home made loved ones secure. The long separations they had to endure. Wives, husbands, sons, oceans apart, each with love buried deep in their heart. Men of Potenza, a place south of Rome, fated to travel a long way from home. Brave men from the mountains go where they must, supporting their loved ones, their sacred trust. Old woman sits at the window yearning for the sound of her children's footsteps returning, but they pace foreign pavements, laneways and streets. She hears just the sound of her lonely heartbeat. Too many trips as the long years passed, returning men vowed this would be their last. Pack up your families, all things of worth, sadly to leave the land of their birth. Ancient Potenza, you hardened your heart, ignored plaintive cries, so now they depart. No time for regret, you now suffer the loss. Your children thrive now neath the great southern cross. Men of Potenza, a place of her own, fated to travel a long way from home. Brave men from the mountains go where they must, supporting their loved ones, their sacred trust.
Are we ready now, Shell? So Shell and Sam are doing a song together called Luna Dog.
Hi everyone, I'm Shell. My thing is true stories. This is about a border collie called Luna who liked to wake me up in the morning by jumping on the bed. Sam's going to help me with this, and if you want to join in, please do. When you hear the words moon sandwich, which is the title of the song, sing on in. Really appreciate it. I've got to try to get this in DA. Oh. Ready? Yep, coming in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Morning time, you bounce my bed and lick my face awake. Dad at my back, you at my chest, my heart and dawn a break. Jump on up, jump on in, the sun is switching on. Oh Luna dog, your brekkie food with eyes of yolks and whites. You make toast of me and buttered good, we snuggle tight and cook moon sandwich. Doing a dance, you rip the sheets and nip the pillow fluff. Dad at my back, you at me, just to hurry and get up. Jump on up, jump on in, the sun is switching on. Oh Luna dog, your brekkie food with eyes of yolks and whites. You make toast of me and buttered good, we snuggle tight and cook moon sandwich. I fell for Dad, I knew I would, but you I didn't know. But in batting balls and puddle muck, we bonded both our souls. So jump on up, jump on in, the sun is switching on. Oh Luna dog, your brekkie food with eyes of yolks and whites. You make toast of me and buttered good, we snuggle tight and cook. Oh Luna dog, your brekkie food with eyes of yolks and whites. You make toast of me and buttered good, we snuggle tight and cook Moon sandwich.
They only practiced that a little bit at lunchtime today, so they did pretty well. Now I have a bit of advertising. Our very own Les Zig is running a workshop at Writers Victoria in the city on Monday the 30th of September from 10 to 4 p.m. It's titled after the first draft, The Mechanics of Revision. So it's got, within the workshop, it has structural editing, structural mapping, common editing mistakes. Price is concession $135, member of Writers Victoria obviously, $145 or non-member $195. So be sure to go on to, if you're interested in something like that, if you've written a novel or some short stories, this will be really useful for you. In my opinion, Les is the best editor I know, so you will learn a lot from that. He just edited my Camino book and it was really embarrassing. It's red everywhere. Thanks, Les. So, Pamela.
I'm almost at the end of the book now. Last time I came, I'd arrived in Melbourne, and I'll continue with that. And I started working, it was okay. So I'll continue. Happy and loving life, my contract was extended to 6 months, and I helped Becky with costumes and rehearsals. It was wonderful to visit the zoos, feeding kangaroos and cutting a koala bear, panning for gold at Ballarat, and travelling on the rattling old train to St Kilda on sunny days to enjoy the beach. When they extended my contract for a further 6 months, I knew I had to create a new number. Clowns are fun, and the store Lincraft had an amazing array of materials to choose from. I designed a harlequin costume with white frills on the neck and cuffs. Tying a hula hoop inside, it was gigantic and funny, and a face mark and miniature top hat completed the outfit. Pulling the line of Velcro open in the centre, I was able to step out of the costume in seconds and dazzle the audience in a sparkling sequined gown. A good number, Becky and her husband said, but you need tricks. And they gave me the music, Be a Clown, and a bugle to blast on, another excellent number. Time passed so quickly. Had I already been in Australia for almost a year? The impresario approached me. Pamela, do you want to continue to work for us? Yes, I love it here. Unfortunately, you have to leave the country, as your work permit will expire, but you can return after 2 months. I have connections and can get you work in Las Vegas. Unprepared, it was a shock to be told I had to leave, and the thought of America was unappealing. No, I'll return to Hong Kong and Taiwan. I know I can get work there. Good, I'll arrange your work permit for your return. Heavy-hearted, I booked a return flight for the 4th of December, packed my belongings, and left the apartment I'd called home. After 2 years, Hong Kong hadn't changed, with an endless rush of people packing the streets, chaotic traffic, and new skyscrapers being built. Chunking mansions remained the same, and the pension was dull and uninviting. The glory of working there had diminished, and Australia was already pulling at my heartstrings. I decided to create a South American number for my return. The colours of Brazil are yellow and green, and I found chiffon materials at the market to make flowing frills and bought hundreds of gold sequins to cover the bodice. The vibrant music of the Americas was easy to find, and there was time in Taiwan to make the costume. Working the usual 3 weeks in the nightclubs with the clown and the Spanish numbers was successful, but I was surprised when the agent called me to tell me it's law. The government insists any artist working in the colony must perform a free television show. They wanted 2 shows for the Saturday night variety show. I chose Raindrops and What Love Needs Now. The costumes looked good on the screen and perhaps helped to make up for the mediocre singing. I was petrified when told I had to sing each word correctly, as Chinese subtitles would be displayed at the bottom of the screen. The rehearsal was perfect, But during the live performance, I suffered an unexpected attack of nerves and stage fright. It had happened once before in Amsterdam. Between numbers, trying to shake off nerves, I banged my head on the wall in despair, which brought me to my senses, and I was able to perform. There were no mistakes, and nothing was said, but artists in the pension told me I had looked nervous. During the month in Taiwan, no unexpected aircraft roared overhead, practicing for war, and I completed the new costume, delighted with the end result. Becky would love it. It was in the final week at the Tainan Theatre when several naked Chinese girls ran across the stage in front of me as I sang. Disgusted, I continued singing, determined never to work there again.
Thanks, Pamela. Steve Dagata is going to have a rant.
Bit of a laugh and a bit of pathos there too, actually. Anyway, I want to talk to you today about a man who's considered the world's greatest living explorer. His name is Sir Randolph Fiennes. You may have heard of him. He recently did a talking tour of Australia. His claim to fame is he's led numerous expeditions and was the first person to visit both the North and South Poles on surface, and the first to completely cross Antarctica on foot. In May 2009, at the age of 65, he climbed the summit of Everest. Following this expedition, he got severe frostbite and had to cut off his own fingers. But is it me, or does anyone else think that this guy's a complete tosser? I mean, sure, he's had some great achievements to his name, and to his credit, he's raised a considerable amount for charity. But his achievements are purely personal. And surely, in this day and age, the role of the explorer is obsolete. Everest was conquered in the 1950s, and truth be told, we didn't learn anything new about the planet when we did. And now anyone can go to the top of Everest via Google Maps, whenever you want. Better still, there's probably a virtual reality app that will take you there, and if you want the full sensory experience, you can lock yourself in a freezer for a couple of weeks with the VR kit and knock yourself out. So the thing is, up until the early 20th century, the only way to find out what was over the next mountain range was to send someone to have a look. But now we have aerial photography, drones and satellites that can go anywhere, anytime, and look at whatever we want. So if you choose to trudge across the tundra or scale a frozen peak, you're not advancing the cause of science or geographical knowledge. The only reason you're doing it is to feel better about yourself. And as for Sir Randolph's bravery in cutting off his own fingers due to frostbite, there was nothing brave about it at all. It's not like he had to do it because he was days away from medical care or his life was at risk. He'd actually come back to the UK, been to visit the surgeon, and the surgeon had a look and said, yeah, the fingers have to cut off, but you know, it'd be good to wait a few weeks for the capillaries to grow back. Then he got home and said, I'll stuff these, it hurts too much, cut the saw and cut him off. So all this got me thinking, what are the true acts of survival and bravery that we should be celebrating instead of the follies of people who feel they need to risk their lives to prove something to themselves? For example, people with serious medical conditions. They display great courage when undergoing painful treatments that are necessary to prolong their lives. And what sort of survival skills do you need to house and feed yourself on Centrelink benefits? As for bravery, how brave do you have to be to open the mail when you know you don't have enough money to pay the bills? And there are those who display all of these qualities in spades, only to be vilified and treated as criminals. How much courage does it take to recognise that the only way to secure the safety of your family is to leave your homeland and seek sanctuary in another land? And how brave do you have to be to invest everything you own in securing passage on a derelict boat to make your escape? And you must be an incredible survivor If you make it through to the land of your dreams, only to be shifted out to a detention centre for an indefinite period. These are the people we should be lording over. These are the people who should be in the record books, and these are people who should be our role models. Food for thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Sam is going to come up again.
Is there anyone else called Sam, or is it me?
No, yeah, it's you.
Cool, that was odd, I think. Cool. I'm off to a great start. How's everyone else feeling? So I wrote this today, as is my custom, I guess, with an open mic night. I realise I have nothing for it and I write it on the day. So it may be terrible, but I don't know that yet, so it'll be fine. And I wrote it, I guess, in honour of my partner, who has been my rock for over a decade. And I call it The Disappearance of Men. He was an angel in my passenger seat, unnatural in casual clothes, in casual conversation. The broken white lines had an ethereal glow in the headlights, and the soft light of brilliance shone on his skin. I did not mind it. I was not scared of him, tightened though he was. I was a pair of eyes, a witness to his brief existence. He escaped into the darkness. He left an imprint on my closed eyes. He fit the shoes with devastating precision. He wore them with a terrible beauty, more terrible and beautiful than all who had stood in his place before him. I had nothing for lungs, and he was the sweet, crisp air that only exists after a midnight coloured by a purple moon. Yours existed tenderly inside a shell of many layers. He surfaced in fragments, precious and few. Asleep, waking only in those moments of exquisite need, lifting up your quiet form with preternatural strength and gentleness. He lived inside of himself. You were more patient than I, waiting for the softness to break the surface. What are you then, you who does not leave? You who I find again, morning after morning, warm and asleep beside me. What are you, that I may sit beside on a couch, may stand behind as you stir pasta, may complain to you about that one person at work? What are you, occupying the passenger seat of my car in the daytime, not glowing, but warm to the touch? The men are gone, and you have stayed. You are something else, something solid, something real. You do not take my breath away. You give it back.
I'd really like if someone could just, write that in just because she's got nothing else to read. Okay. Kira is going to read or tell us about her soup van story.
I wasn't sure I was going to read it.
That's okay.
But why not?
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been meaning to come to this open mic for ages, so it's really lovely to be here, and I just love the vibe. It's so wonderful, and I'm really excited. Yeah, as a mum of two, I don't get out very much, so I've come from Green Hills to Montmorency, which is quite far for me. I used to volunteer on the soup vans in the city, and during that time, it was quite a few years ago, but we met quite a few amazing people who lived in the commission housing flats, people who were homeless, and the volunteers themselves who all had amazing stories to tell. And we wanted to record them in some way, so we put together a book back in 2012, and it's something that really inspired me and taught me about how important it is not just to listen to someone's story, but to record it and then also to give it back to them and share it with them, and in order to generate a sense of respect between their family and friends, but also a sense of accomplishment in what they've done in their life, and and a reason possibly for why they've got to where they are in their life as well. So it's something, now that my kids are going to school next year, I'd like to get back into. And I was chatting to Blaise the other day about maybe going into aged care and interviewing people and talking to them and putting together some life stories that they can celebrate with their family and friends. So although after the aged care story from, was it Joan, I'm not sure about going into aged care and what those interviews will be like, but it will be entertaining anyway. So I thought I'd just share a little bit from one of the stories that really inspired me, about a Serbian man named Miroslav Paunov. So this was back when I was a student. When I interviewed Miroslav Paunov in his small apartment on Tuesday the 19th of June 2012, a 5.4 magnitude earthquake shook Melbourne, but neither of us noticed. I held the dictaphone over a pillow and watched it slide off as he recounted his birth. Miroslav handed me his passport first, showing me that his hometown was Bavaniste in Serbia, and said quite plainly, "My family don't want me. I'm homosexual and I have HIV. After 40 years, they're too far from my eyes, and so too far from my heart." He wrote down, "Daleko od okiju, daleko od skra," long absent, too forgotten. And together, we realised that his life had come full circle from his birth amongst the food parcels of the wartime Red Cross to his ageing 70s living in commission housing, visited weekly by the soup van. It's not a circle, he told me, it's circumstance. Not everything in life is about a choice, but often it's about circumstance. He had to take a Valium in order to tell me about his life. So he walked around the room, stood close to the fire, put his jacket on, walked to the window, tugged it off again, and I sat on the couch with his cat and waited. What happened was this: I was born into charity at the end of the war in 1945. If it wasn't for America, we would have all starved. I was actually a premature baby, but that was my father's fault. He walked into the house one day. My mother was standing in the kitchen. She was still pregnant with me, and my father had blood all over him. "What happened?" she said. "I've killed our next door neighbour," he told her. That man had accused him of stealing. My father was a liar, but he didn't steal. My mother went into such a state of shock she started having contractions, and I was born right away on the kitchen floor 3 months early. My father went to jail, my mother died from blood loss, and I starved and had no one to raise me. Can you imagine starting your life in this way? His cat stretched in front of the fire as I took this in too. I didn't even know my father had killed a man until I was an older boy. I always wondered why the neighbour's wife and her sons went right around our house. I wrote this down and I read over it, and Miroslav calmly moved on with his story, still walking in circles around the room. I'll just skip through a bit. "Did your father ever know you were gay?" I asked, much later. "My father never knew I was gay because my father didn't want to know, and I didn't tell my father that when I was 6, a man across the road raped me. My father was a very bad man. When he drinks, he was worse, and he had already killed one man. He went to jail, yes, he was prosecuted, but because my mother had died, they had to release him. There were 3 kids and he had to look after us. I had a brother and a sister, and they gave him amnesty, they forgave him, so he worked hard. But he bashed us all, my new stepmother mostly, and I didn't step in because I was too young. We went quiet." I'll skip a little bit more because it's quite long. Miroslav's interview took place over several hours, and we went through really incredible highs and lows of his life and how he came out to Melbourne and how he ended up in commission housing and on the soup van. But a few weeks, what was important was a lot of the time he was angry, but he also came back to the fact that I have to be what I am, what God made me. I have a compassionate heart. I know I was a victim before, but I won't go back again to see my family. I need to do my own thing now. My book will be a bestseller, but I just can't write it. I had to take a Valium to tell you this much. And a few weeks later, I wrote down the words and I met Miroslav again at his home and I read his story back to him. His eyes filled with tears and I found it intensely difficult to read some parts for fear he'd think I'd told it wrong. But instead he lay back and he recited words with me at different stages. Astonished that his life had actually been captured, he began to cry. But at the end, he suddenly leapt up, scaring the cat, and started dancing. Arms thrown out, he said, "I can now look in the mirror and know I'm strong. I'm a stronger man than I thought."
Thank you. That was a good synergy there with those stories. Chris Birdman. Yay. Chris is our last performer tonight. Did I miss anybody? No? Come on up.
Great.
And then we'll do the door prize. Would you like a
I'd like a stool, yeah, that'd be great. It's been an entertaining evening. It's been fun. I love the stories. I'm going to do a song called Cariad, which for anyone that's Welsh or means my sweetheart or my love. And it's the obvious song about yearning and wanting to go back to your roots or partner. It goes like this.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Okay, well, we've had a really eclectic mix of stuff tonight. It's fantastic. Now, I just wanted to remind people we have a couple of events coming up. A one-day book camp here on Saturday the 12th of October from 9 to 5, and then a life writing workshop on the 16th of November, just a 3-hour one, 10 till 1. Anything else?
Awkward writing retreat.
Oh yes, the Bali writing retreat. 45 days. Not that I'm counting or anything. Yes, so there's still a couple of spaces if anyone wants to come to Bali. Come and chat to me later if you don't know what that's about. But it's a week of writing, so if you're wanting to get a project done, you can come to Bali and I'm going to help you get it done. We are now going to, and next month we are going to announce the winners of the manuscript assessments. So that's next month. Where did I put the tub? We are giving away a copy of the latest Untitled. So, have you got your... We don't have Richard here. No one's sitting next to Richard. Usually whoever's sitting next to Richard wins.
That's right.
So the winner tonight is very well folded ticket. Orange F20. 21. Anyone got 20? Yes, there you go. So thank you all so much for coming. Please stay and have some wine and crackers or a cup of tea, whatever you like. And we'll see you next month. Thanks. Did anyone have any events of their own coming up that they want to tell people about? Because you can do that. No? Okay, thanks.